tough years, and it's just got to be better. I'm not saying we're going to have less inflation, although we can't get a whole lot more unless we really get into a complete meltdown. And some people think we are. I tend to be more optimistic about what's going on with our little world and society and stuff like that, because I think we're going to do just fine. We're going to do just fine.
But I'd like to point out, Gary, that even if we're not going to be just fine, this is why we have shows like these to get people prepared to set themselves up. So if things do come to a more harsher point in the timeline, that we're ready to go.
Go meaning die.
Well, that's not what I was talking about.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Financially prepared.
I actually have a website that's called, and this was my thing a long time ago, is don'tgowithoutone.com. And it was like this play on words, like don't go without one. Just don't even go without one. Don't die without one. Don't travel without one. Don't be alive without one. Get an estate plan. And I was at seminars Thursday, Friday, Saturday with California Society of Tax Consultants. The organization was sponsoring an event by Brass Tax, who puts on a tax update every year. So it's like 8 hours of education. Tax professionals are there from 8 o'clock to 4, and you learn about the 1040 tax return. It is literally schedule by schedule. It just starts out with page 1, then page 2, then schedule A, B, C, D, all the way back. And it's great, incredible education. Well, I'm there as a attendee and as a sponsor. So as a sponsor, I get to see all my friends that I've known for 35 years in the tax industry and talk to them about whatever we want to talk about. And because I am the estate planning attorney that hangs out with them, and I do the estate planning, the wills, the trust, the power of attorneys, I do the trust administration and distributions after people pass away. We do probate. We fight for successor trustees, to do a good job. We manage them. We represent them. We represent all that stuff. So I got a lot of people that talk to me over the 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. A lot of people came up to me and said, you know what? I've known you for 30 years. I need to do a trust. Of course they need a trust. So when do I need a trust? What do I need to have? I said, you have a house. Yes, you need a trust. Okay. Do you have any minor children? Yes, I do. You need a trust. And so sometimes it just takes all of us to become interested in something that we need to do. It takes kind of a recognition or a reminder, a realization that sometimes we just need to kind of step up and put things together and get things in order. And that's why we do this radio show. Noah's my producer. He's my board operator. He's my engineer. He's doing all these things to help put this show on, because we're talking about things that every person listening knows they need it. And it's just a matter of when it becomes important enough to you to trade that off with time, because it does take time. It requires a visit or two to me and my team to set up an estate plan. It's not difficult. For me, it's a piece of cake. For you, it shouldn't be difficult. We try to make it as simple as possible, explain all the concepts in English, not legalese. I have clients that will come in that wanted explained to them in Spanish, which I explained to them that all legal documents in the United States are in English, so the trust will not be in Spanish. I do not provide a trust translation, but I will happily, in Spanish, explain to you the concept, like how it works, what it's exactly doing, who the property is going to, how it gets paid. Can we delay distributions? Can we pay it out, based on age or behavior, or can we restrict it based on age or behavior? And all those things we can explain in 2 languages. Sorry, no more than 2, but we can got those two languages down. And so we do that quite often. At these seminars, it was really cool to talk to people that really were at a point where they realize, okay, I trust you. I've known you for a long time. I know I need to do this. Most of the people I talked to said that they are telling their clients every single year, did you get your trust in order? Did you go talk to Gary? You need to go talk to Gary. Here's his card. Go to GQ Law, go to gqlaw.com. We're handing out materials to explain that. And eventually the tax professional, a lot of them would, they've been pushing their clients to get it done. And then they go, oh, I need to get it done too. So we help them. I mean, that's been my deal for 3 decades, helping tax professionals and their clients become estate planned. So they've got that stuff in order. And I'm happy to help you, listeners. Also, that's why I'm doing this show, because I want to offer you the benefit of information, knowledge, and education by listening to the show. And we talk about estate planning. And if it's really boring to you, well, I think we can learn together and understand what's going on and understand why this topic that's for some people is very, very boring, for others it's thrilling, why it needs to be done and why to understand it. So that's the purpose, is to understand. Now, I can help you with your estate plan. I have a number that is specifically for you, and the number is 855-500-TRUST. So super easy to remember, 855-500-TRUST. Talk to me about your estate planning needs. I'm going to ask you what you own, what you might be inheriting, what property you, what mortgages do you have? What, do you have big debt issues, whatever? Most of that stuff is going to be, I just want basic numbers. it doesn't matter to me that you've got, $163,842 in a Schwab account. And it's just like, how much you have in retirement accounts? Well, I have a Schwab and a Vanguard and some money at Newberg or Berman. Okay. Between all of those, how much of that is qualified, like tax deferred retirement accounts? Oh, 300. And how much of it is invested money in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds that are not tax deferred? They are not sitting in your retirement account or your IRA. Oh, nothing. All right. Got it. How much is your house worth? How much is the mortgage? And it doesn't matter whether the house today is worth $1 million and tomorrow it's going to be worth 900, or yesterday it was worth 2. It doesn't matter. We just are coming up with adjusted, with numbers, because they change all the time. You say plan, it has to be flexible. So you call me, 855-500-TRUST. You get that done. It's the beginning of the year, you guys. It's 2023. This is the year. Get your estate plan done. Our goal is to get thousands of you listeners to get your estate plan done, so we can have that many people living more peaceably. You know that things are taken care of. If if you have parents that you're dealing with that need an estate plan that are just refusing to do it, that is a tough situation, because when they pass away, if they don't have a will, if they don't have a trust, it's going to be a mess. If they don't have a trust, but they do have a will, that's all they have is a will, and they own real property, or their property's worth more, all of their property combined worth more than $180,000, and they have a will, it's still going to go through probate. Okay. So probate is a big deal because it takes 9 to 12 months. I'm very good at probate. I've been doing it for a very long time. I have an incredible team that helps me put people through probate petitions. And when we do it, I love the work. I love what we get done and what we get resolved, but I don't like how long it takes. I have cases in probate that are open for 9 months, sometimes 12 months, or 2 years, or sometimes 3 years, depending on what's going on. But it's a long process. It's a very expensive process, and you want to avoid it. And you can avoid it with a living trust. Call me, 855-500-TRUST, 855-500-TRUST, and let's get that taken care of. If it's on, put it on your checklist this year, put it on your goal list. I want to get my estate plan done in the first quarter of 2023. Okay, that's 3 months. You got 3 months to get it done. 855-500-TRUST. Coming up next, I have a really interesting case I want to talk to you about in the case of the week right here.
You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. We're here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST. You're saving and investing for the future, and that's good. Have you ever stopped to think, where does my money actually go? This is Faith-Based Investing with Anthony Wright.
Most Christian families don't understand this one thing. The money that you're saving for retirement helps fund the abortion industry as well as other liberal anti-family causes. It's the sad, dirty little secret of American investing world. And here's the good news, though. You probably also didn't know that just a few minutes of your time, and we'll screen and clean your investments for you. There's no cost, no obligation. information, learn the truth about your own investment mix, then the choice is yours. Remember, the word says when God's money is in the hands of the righteous, the people rejoice. Well, we also are fiduciary investment advisor representatives. That means that our firm makes a pledge to always act in your best interest. Go to BibleSafeInvesting.com, download a free copy of my book, Faith-Based Investing, or call me at 931-RETIRED. And please don't forget, listen to Faith-Based Investing this weekend right here on Family Talk.
Gary, how do you and your team help our listeners avoid probate?
Well, first of all, probate is a process that involves attorneys, judges, and sometimes contesting parties. And so we try to avoid probate at pretty much all costs. The way we do that is setting up living trusts, setting up properly documented wills, putting the property like houses, cars, bank accounts in that trust so that it avoids probate. Probate is only necessary if the estate plan isn't set up quite right. So we help them get it set up right. And mainly that's done through a properly created living trust.
Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free initial consultation. That's gqlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST.
Join other freedom-loving patriots in taking your power back. The Take Your Power Back show with me, peak performance breakthrough coach Kim Yater, is an empowering program that will encourage listeners to step into their power and take action in leadership and allow their voices to be heard. Every Saturday at 11 a.m., we will highlight freedom-loving Americans that are making a positive impact in the world by standing in truth amid adversity. Be inspired, be encouraged, be transformed. Together, let's take your power back.
During the pandemic, they closed our churches down.
Suicide rates are exploding. Drug and alcohol use is ravaging America, and there's no church to bring the hope.
See the new documentary, Super Spreader, how a stand against religious tyranny brought hope to a country in crisis.
Christian singer and activist Sean Foyt leading
Tell a friend about this broadcast outreach, The Word on Wealth, with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Call or click to request your free initial consultation or to talk with a member of the team. Call Gary at 855-500-TRUST, gqlaw.com.
The Gary Quackenbush, GQ Law, Word on Wealth, Case of the Week.
Hey, everybody, case of the week. Here you go. We got 3 adult children. It's 2 sisters and a brother. Now, that's not the problem. That's a good thing. 2 sisters and a brother. Dad died 5 years ago. Mom just recently passed away. And before she passed away, she did a trust, which is great. Hooray. Awesome. And she named her son as the successor trustee. She passed away. He took over the job of being successor trustee. He's managing her retirement account. Couple $100,000 in an investment account and a home. All right. Brother feels that mom's home has not been upgraded, updated, upped anything in the last 40 years because she's lived there for a very long time. The carpets are pretty much worn out. The colors are kind of old colors. The tile and the countertops looks old. Everything's dated. So what brother decides to do is he has a realtor friend that says, hey, if you change the color in the walls, put in some nice carpeting, you upgrade that kitchen, take out this wall, put in this thing here, all these little things you can do. And I've got a contractor that if you work with the contractor yourself, then you can reduce the cost by providing. You can do the demolition in the kitchen and he'll let you do that instead of charging you $5,000 to do that. He'll let you pick things out and you can go and, you can save yourself money if you work at it. So the trustee decides, I'm going to do that. $100,000 later and a year and a half later, and those of you that have had remodeling done on your house, a year to a year and a half can happen. Well, what was going on is successor trustee was working. And on weekends, he was working really hard on the house to help the contractor to try to save some money. so they could do the remodel. They did the bathrooms, they did the kitchen, they did new carpeting, they repainted, beautiful looking house inside. However, the market during the year and a half, the market went bad. And in the year and a half that it took brother to do the improvements, the house dropped over $150,000 in value. Now, it didn't have to drop that far, to make my example a good one, but it actually did. So what went on? Problem number one is the trustee is spending the trust money on upgrading the house. Is it worth it? Does he have a professional opinion? Is a realtor going to say, yes, if you spend $100,000 on that house, upgrading and updating, and you sell the house, it's going to make you an extra $100,000. Well, he didn't really have that, and you're not going to get that. Most real estate agents will say, put some money into it. Let's put in 50 grand. I have real estate agent friends that usually say, put in 15 grand to make it look more presentable, but don't go and change the, put in brand new super fancy carpet and all that, because they're going to replace the carpet anyway, or they're going to tear it out and put in tile. So you don't have to lay down tile and wood floorings and make it all, fancy like this in my example, the brother did. So the problems is he's spending the trust money, and it's not the problem that he's actually spending. He's just spending it on things that don't make a lot of sense. Okay. Because you don't need to upgrade the house. Get it ready for sale. Do not upgrade the house. Number two, the property dropped in value. Now, it wouldn't be a problem if he got the remodel and everything done, and it took, the typical 4 to 6 months to get the remodel done because the contractor's going for it. And, now it's worth an amazing amount of money or whatever. But what happened is that it took so long, partly because he was trying to help out on weekends, trying to save money, trying to do this, whatever. He just really messed up, and it took way too long to get the house done. The house dropped in value. So if property drops, if the trust value drops while the trustee is working on things, whose fault is that? Well, the successor trustee has that fault. Okay. If the successor trustee could have done something reasonable to prevent the loss, or if the trustee were acting reasonably so that even though there was a loss, there was at least some reasonable actions, then it could be possible to reduce that trustee's risk, or reduce the loss to the trust. So what I mean is if he had put less money in upgrades, so to where it seemed reasonable. I mean, the upgrades he was putting in, it was a $600,000 house, and he's putting $100,000 in upgrades. Does that seem reasonable? I don't know. That's like 15 or 20% of the value of the house. Did he get an increase in 15 or 20% value? No. In fact, the house dropped. It was worth 6. It dropped 25% while he put in 15% of the cost. So it just was a disaster all around. The two sisters were really ticked off. They hired an attorney to go after him for breach of fiduciary duty. He didn't provide an accounting to them annually like he was supposed to. Every time they demanded that, him, nicely demanding, requesting, whatever you want to call it, every time they wanted an accounting, he just blew them off. You guys don't trust me. That's too bad. Mom named me as successor trustee. I'm doing this job. Just leave me alone. That's not a good thing either. So the fact that he wasn't working with his sisters, the fact that he spent so much money on the upgrades, the fact that it took so long for him to get them done, and a lot of it was within his control. That's what we were able to establish. Most of it was within his control. It was his decision to delay and keep making these decision changes and all that. So what happened is the court was ready to hold him responsible for the loss to the trust. Now, it wasn't 100% of the loss because some of it would have been reasonable, but the court was ready to do that. We ended up settling the case, which is really nice because I'd rather have the beneficiaries kind of not consuming each other, but working together, but still not letting the successor trustee take advantage of them. So we worked through that. The penalty, the cost to that successor trustee was the cost to make it whole if it were done by a reasonably competent successor trustee. So the fact that the price dropped in value so far, some of that drop in value was his fault because he took so long. Okay. The fact that the upgrades were so expensive and he was doing some of the work himself. So the upgrades are probably more like $150,000 or $120,000 of upgrades, and just crazy amount of upgrades. Those are things that just didn't need to be done. So what happens is the beneficiaries win in cases like that. You know, we do this quite often where we have the successor trustee and it's been a year or 2 years and there's no communication and we don't know what's going on. Is the house being sold? Is it being rented? Is it being demolished? Is it insured? All those things. We deal with that. If you have questions on this, I mean, that's also just, you can call me 855-500-TRUST and we will work through it and tell you whether your trustee is being reasonable. A lot of them are. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but best you can is one thing, but what you're legally required to do sometimes is a very different thing. So you want to make sure your trustee is handling your money properly. Yes, mom named him as the successor trustee, which is great because she trusted him, but that doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants. And I've had successor trustees that will tell me that I can do whatever I want. Mom put me in charge. In fact, mom gave me all the money. I heard that, gosh, it was, within the last year, and I had somebody that actually said, no, it's all my money. I was representing the beneficiaries. And the successor trustee said, it's my money. Read it right here. Here's the trust. And the trust says that all the money is to be distributed to the beneficiaries. And then she said, here, read this deed. And it was a deed transferring the house to the trust, which was done properly because the deed actually said that they transfer their house from them to the trustee of their trust. Well, now she's the trustee and sister's thinking, well, I'm the trustee, so I own it. Not realizing there's this big difference. It's not even subtle. It's a huge difference between the trustee owning it for the trust, which is as the trustee of the trust, or the person owning it individually. If mom and dad had transferred the house to sister directly and said, here, we're leaving it up to you. We want you to take care of your brothers and sisters. Make sure you're nice to them, and then they die. Well, it's the sister's house. And if she's not going to be nice to him, it doesn't matter. It's her house. And you're going to be in some fight over that, whether she was supposed to be nice and what that really means. But if the house is deeded to the child before parents died, it's their house. That's a tough one. But when they deed the house from themselves to the trustees of the trust, and you become the trustee, it's not your property. It's not your house. It is your responsibility to do what the trust says regarding that property. But it's the property is literally titled in the name of the trustee of that trust. So the trustee has the ability to sell it, to transfer it, to, swap it in a 1031 exchange. Most of the time it gets sold. If they wanted to sell it to, or distribute it to multiple beneficiaries, that if the trust provided for it, they could. But that trustee is the one that has the authority to do the transfers and to do the disposition of the property, to sell it, to distribute it to one of the kids or whatever the trust said. They do not own the property. So that was something that people run into. And I'm not saying it's an innocent mistake. I'm saying it's an ignorant mistake because her siblings believed this one that I'm telling you, where she said, well, I'm the trustee and here's this deed saying it's my property. The beneficiaries believe that. And there's multiple challenges with that. One of the big ones, this is one it scares me the most. The big one is who is insuring the house? Because if the house were transferred to the trust properly and parents died, the house is now in the trust. It's not owned by the parents anymore. The parents are dead. It's in this administrative trust. It's in this kind of holding pattern between parents and kids because they're going to eventually inherit it. Who pays the insurance? The answer is the trustee pays the insurance. So the trustee pays it on behalf of, the trust. So now you have the trust paying for the insurance on the house. And are you delaying? Are you taking too long? These are things you have to act reasonably. You that are trustees out there, you've got to act reasonably. If you want to talk about it, make sure you do it right. Give me a call, 855-500-TRUST. Trustee's job is a big deal. But like I said, we help trustees and beneficiaries. And if the trustee's doing their job right, I am more than happy to tell the beneficiary, you know what, this is the best you're going to get. They're doing their job. I mean, it's not perfect, but as far as damages, no damages. Could they be doing better? Most people could. But if you are a trustee and you don't know what you're doing, do not play with that. You're playing with fire. Make sure you get competent legal help to help you. It's going to cost way less than it would in probate. Cost some money. It's going to cost way less than it would in probate. This is Gary Quackenbush here on the Word on Wealth. My number is 855-500-TRUST. Coming up next, we have got Rich Mathurin, who is a tax attorney with GQ Law. So on Monday, what we do on our special Mondays is we have Rich come in and talk about, we call it tax controversy work, like tax problem solving. So we're going to have him come and talk about that, about, filing late tax returns. What if you owe money to the IRS or the state of California? What if you have penalties? Can we get rid of penalties? Is this the end of the world? Am I should I go dig a hole and crawl in it because I owe taxes? Rich is going to be helping us understand all of that coming up next, right here on the Word on Wealth.
You've got questions. We've got answers. This is the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary's here to give you peace of mind with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary to build, protect, and transfer your wealth. 855-500-TRUST. GQLaw.com.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters.
You're not alone. Ask for the legal help you need. Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free consultation or to talk with a member of the GQ team. That's GQLaw.com, 855-500-TRUST.
Go on.
Right. Welcome back to the Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush. As promised, we have Rich Mathurin from GQ Law. What we're going to do is we have Rich come in on our Mondays because this is the day we're going to help you resolve your tax problems. It's on our Mondays. It's Monday tax day, man. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Great to be here, Gary.
Well, I've always got 100 questions for you. So let's get started. What I wanted to find out, some people wonder, you talked about having a tax situation. And I've had people ask me, they say, well, so if I owe the IRS money, is the IRS going to put me in jail?
No, they eliminated debtor prisons back when we won the revolution in 1776. So the debtor prisons no longer exist. If you are doing criminal fraud, that's a different story, but I think that's probably something beyond the scope of this discussion.
So you can go to jail. So as far as like non-filing, I mean, technically it's a crime to not file because it's a misdemeanor. But people don't typically get put in jail in the IRS, as we know. The IRS doesn't really like to enforce that because they'd rather have the ability to collect your money. And if you got put in jail, then it's just gonna incur more money. But so man, so I did have, this was years and years ago, I had a guy that actually had served time. And while he was in jail, he got put in jail for protesting taxes. And it was, he was saying that he wasn't a U.S. citizen. He lived in a commonwealth, all these different things. And he went to somebody who told him how to untax himself and become a non-citizen, which I'm not sure how to do that. But they did it. And he ended up getting in trouble, ended up going to jail for it. And then he came back out of jail and thought that the taxes would be all gone. And he says, really? I've been in jail. And he was like a year. Says, I'm in a year. You'd think that because I served time for this, this fraud penalty thing, this fraud that I did, that the taxes would go away. And there's even more taxes due now. So it's like,
no, it's based on when they assess the taxes. The IRS, they have 10 years from the date of assessment to collect from you.
Right.
So, they, even if you spend some time in jail or go on a long vacation, they can still be there when you come back.
That's right. And it's like, and if you vacation a very long time outside of the United States, the IRS actually has more than 10 years because when you leave the country, they add the time. It's crazy. So luckily we don't have to deal much with the criminal side of things with taxes, but Rich deals on a daily basis with people that haven't filed and the IRS is still coming after him. So talk about that a little bit, Rich. If you haven't filed tax returns in like 5 or 6 or 7 years, and then, some people don't. I mean, that's why you and me exist, to be able to take care of their situation. But somebody that hasn't filed in 5 or 6 or 7 years, how is it that the IRS is trying to take their money? They never filed the return.
Well, generally the IRS will get some type of word of taxpayer having some income, whether it be through a W-2, a 1099. Sometimes somebody may report them. Also, there can be audits done on people. So they do have ways of finding out when you do have income. So, and then they would do an assessment of you, and they would do what's called a substitute for return, where they would prepare a return based on the income information they have for you, give you a standard minimum deductions that you're allowed, and then tax you at the highest rate allowed. And those substitute for returns can act as a tax return in place of the ones that you did not file.
So that's not even, they haven't even filed the tax, we have to call them taxpayers with air quotes because they're not paying their taxes, right? But they have not filed literally have not filed tax returns, and the IRS gets information, we call it like 1099s or W-2s or other than that. And the IRS actually puts together an assessment, like almost as if they filed a return.
Yes.
And then they collect it.
Yeah, those are very insidious. Though you have to be very careful of those things because, like I said, the taxes are probably going to be much higher than if you had actually filed your own return. If you ever wanted to file bankruptcy down the line, usually taxes would be dischargeable if they fit a 3-pronged test. Those SFR substitute returns are never dischargeable, even if you replace them later. So those are things that we just really want to avoid.
So it's really what you're saying. The key thing, even if you owe money, get your tax returns filed, because if you wait too long and the IRS files it for you, you're going to have a really hard time shaking it.
Also, the state may come after you.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah,
they're a little
theirs
crazier, right?
as aggressive, if not more. They'll do what's called a notice of proposed assessment. It's the same as an SFR, but they use their own calculations. They even take like mortgage interest. They'll use mortgage interest statements. If you get a mortgage interest statement where you paid mortgage interest, they'll sometimes use that to attribute income to you. If you're in a particular business and they get word of that business, they will say, like, you're a barber. They'll take a normal barber's revenue for the state of California and use that as a basis to tax you. So the state is even more aggressive than the IRS. And usually if one finds out about your non-filing, the other will follow suit and do the same.
So if the state of California, if you're self-employed and they know that, I mean, yeah. So if you're self-employed and in San Diego, you have to have within 30 days of operating a business, you have to apply for a business license. So the state of California has access to that information. Or if you file a corporation or whatever, you have to tell the state. So the state then figures out that you're, let's say, self-employed, and then they make up a number. They say, well, you're right. The hairdressers, the independent contractor hairdresser makes whatever, $50,000 a year. They're going to pretend like you made the 50,000. What about deductions? What about booth rental, and what about all the supplies and all that
They'll
stuff?
give you the standard deduction. If you're, a single individual, they'll give you the standard deduction for a single individual, and then tax you at the highest, that single individual highest tax rate for, the state rate. I think it maxes out at like 14%. I don't know exactly what it would be based on the, it's a very, very difficult thing if you get these substitute for returns with the IRS or the notice of proposed assessment with the state, and the state has 20 years to collect. I should mention that too. So they'll hang out there even longer than the IRS.
So if you want help with this stuff, you can call GQ Law. You can talk to Rich directly. The number is 855-500-TRUST. We're using that for all calls on this radio show, 855-500-TRUST. Okay. So my next question, Rich, then the IRS or the state of California, they do this substitute for return or the notice of proposed assessment like you're talking about, and you are self-employed. In very typical situation is somebody's a contractor, or in the contract business, right? They're a handyman and they put in a kitchen or they do whatever, and the state of California finds out, oh, this guy should have been making $85,000 a year, and they plug it in. They start going after him for money. They tell the state, they tell the IRS starts coming after him. What do you do for somebody like that? I mean, here's this return saying you made all this money and it doesn't claim expenses. Can you fix it?
I would probably initially have them work with our enrolled agent to fix the missing tax returns and replace them. They may not be dischargeable in bankruptcy later, but fixing them. I have seen cases where like the notice of proposed assessment or the substitute for return creates tax balances like 60,000, and then our enrolled agent goes in and does the return actually with showing the business's actual income, actual expenses, give the person the deductions they're allowed, and tax them at the rate they should be taxed at. And this usually significantly lowers their balance. If they are unwilling to do that, there are options there. You can accept what the IRS, the FTB has calculated as your income and your taxable income, and we can set you up in payment plans for that. Possibly could do an offer and compromise with the IRS for your tax balances, or possibly if you're destitute and don't have income to pay, we might be able to get you into what's called a currently not collectible for the IRS or a hardship status for the FTB. Again, bankruptcy probably wouldn't be an option because you have those missing returns.
So you're going to go get you're going to do and these are typically old returns. They're not like last year's return to the year before, typically kind of old. So we're going to get the deductions. Sometimes we have to estimate what they would be because you got the cost of materials, the cost of goods sold, those type of things. All those, they can be included then in a tax return after the fact. So Rich and I, we're going to keep talking about this. I've got a couple more questions for him. He mentioned the offer and compromise, and I want to ask Rich some specifics on that. Like, how does that, like, in what circumstances does that work? What kind of a deal can people typically get? If you want help from any of us to do that, it's 855-500-TRUST. 855-500-TRUST. You can call and talk to Rich directly about offer and compromise payment plans, fixing tax returns like we just talked about. He's been doing it at GQ Law for years. He's a very experienced attorney. Give us a call, 855-500-TRUST. But up next, what is this offer and compromise thing?
You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to the Word on Well with Gary Quackenbush. We're here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com. 855-500-TRUST.
We've talked a long time about estate administration. So what is that? And why is it important?
Estate administration is the distribution part of estate planning. So when someone passes away and they leave money to beneficiaries, the property has to be administered. So it's like taking it from the decedent to the survivor. That's called the estate administration process. So usually you're going to have a successor trustee that's named in the trust. They'll have no idea what they're doing because they've never done it before. So then they call on GQ Law and we walk them step by step on how to be a successful and good successor trustee. We also do the required notifications. We notify the Department of Health Services and all the legal requirements so that they can have the estate administration done properly. We help successor trustees be successful.
Call or click to request your free consultation. GQLaw.com, 855-500-TRUST, GQLaw.com.
If you own a vehicle you no longer need, donate it to christianswhocare.org. You've heard about Christians Who Care Ministries car donation programs since 2005 here on KPRZ KCBQ. The charity was born right here in San Diego East County. Your donation of virtually any vehicle, car, truck, or van, running or not, is 100% tax deductible. It's easy to donate. Pastor Paul and his team at Christians Who Care Ministries are ready to accept your donation or answer any questions. Call toll-free at 888-488-5808 or use their simple online donation form at christianswhocare.org. They'll call within 24 hours to arrange your free vehicle pickup. You'll receive your tax-deductible receipt. christianswhocare.org is an IRS-approved 501c3 nonprofit ministry. Call 888-488-5808 to learn more.
Call or click to request your free initial consultation or to talk with a member of the team. Call Gary at 855-500-TRUST. GQ Law.
You're live.
Hey, welcome back to the Word on Well. This is Gary Quackenbush and Rich Mathurin. Rich, thanks for being on the show today.
Great always to be here. Enjoy it.
Really appreciate it. So we were talking about people that haven't filed tax returns and now they owe money. So we're fixing, you're correcting those tax returns, giving them the credits that they deserve. And the fact that they really are married and have children, we're getting that on the tax return, or they're self-employed and they get their deductions, you're getting that done too. So returns are all fixed. We still look at the tax bill and go, oh my gosh, there's so much money owed. There's no way they can afford to pay it. They don't have that many assets. It's like really struggling. Let's talk about this deal, the IRS. You hear a lot about people getting an offer with the IRS. They're making an offer, an offer in compromise. Talk about that a little bit. What is the offer in compromise? What is that? Who's that available to?
It's a really good program. I would caution that there are certain things that you do need to qualify. I think one is if you can full pay your balance under a payment plan, the IRS is going to push you into that. So say you owe $60,000, but the IRS still has 8 or 10 years to collect. And you have the income, they generally will push you into a payment plan rather than an offer. Also, if you have equity in your assets, home equity, retirement accounts, bank accounts, equity in vehicles, generally the IRS is going to want those included in the offer. So in essence, because they want those included, it doesn't really make sense for those type of people to do an offer.
So let me back you up a little bit and kind of the basics of the offer in compromise then. The offer is you owe money to the IRS. It's like going to the IRS and saying, hey, IRS, I owe you $100,000. I don't have that kind of money. I want to make a deal. So the idea of the offer and compromise program is there's an amount of money that's being offered to the IRS in order to compromise the whole liability.
Yeah.
And now what you're talking about specifically is how much would the offer be for?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say that somebody, so you're saying the offer is they look at assets, like the net realizable equity in assets, like how much equity do you have in your car minus an exemption amount, you know, and they're looking for some cash assets. So you calculate how much asset stuff is available, and then talk about there's an income factor also. So assets are in one pile, whatever they are, you know, we'll just say, you know, whatever, $5,000. And then what about this income? How does your income play into the offer and compromise?
Well, it would be an income from a job or your own business. And then you would be allowed deductions that you, standard deductions that the IRS would allow for one person, two person. It's based on the area that you live in. Like San Diego County has its own housing and utilities and car expenses, things like that. And then based on the income less your allowed expenses, you get a net income factor, and that is multiplied by 12. So if you say you have a disposable income of $5,000 a month, your offer would be at a minimum 60,000, the 5,000 times the 12. If you have like $500, then it would be like $6,000, you know, 12 times $500 a month.
And what if I'm not working at all? I have no income. I have some unemployment. Don't know how long that's going to last, but I'm just like, I have no income.
Generally, they will not, if you do not have income currently, they will not consider an offer. That's what our experience has shown. You have to have some type of income, Social Security, you know, even if it's a part-time job or you're doing, you know, walking dogs or selling Avon, that's considered thing. But if you're, you know, if you're totally not working, I think they would rather have you in the non-collectible status, currently
That makes sense.
non-collectible.
Because they're kind of, it seems like with the offer, they're trying to figure out if you know, based on your kind of not necessarily moving forward, but you have regular monthly income pretty much, so that it's not like, you know, you're unemployed, you're not making any money, you all of a sudden do this offer, you show you have no income, you offer the IRS $5,000, and then they take it, and then the day after you go and get this huge big job. I mean, it seems like that's what the IRS is looking for. So it's kind of, offer is really, if you're kind of, you've got some income moving forward, that's the kind of the ideal offer and compromise.
Yeah, what I think, kind of simplifying it, what the IRS is trying to determine is, should they take what you're offering now, you know, based on the equity and assets and your net income times 12, versus what can they collect in the future from you? That's sort of their analysis, what they're trying to figure out. Should they push you into a payment plan and wait you out type of thing, or should they take that money now? It's, you know, I think it works a lot for people with very little in assets and maybe a fixed income, you know, that isn't high, so that multiple times 12 is not that excessive. Those are the ideal candidates. Again, I think you do need to massage the form. I always have a saying that I say to my clients: pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. So, you know, you want to take as much as you can in terms of your allowed expenses, your business expenses. You want to make your asset estimates as, you know, as fair market value as possible type of thing. But if you're taking things that just aren't going to be allowed, and you know are going to be denied, and the offer is going to be returned, then it's just, you know, you really want to make sure that the application is done correctly. And as I think we've mentioned before, this is not a type of thing where grandma gives you $5,000 and you owe the IRS $500,000. You can just offer that $5,000 that you have on your hands right now, and there's some guy in a back room that gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It is kind of that application process. The application has to be very specific. And then there is a whole process after they receive the offer. They usually process it. Used to be about 3 months. Now it's taking 6 months because of, you know, IRA, because of the pandemic results. But then I think that's really where I kind of earn my money, is working with these offer specialists to, you know, they have questions, they have additional documents that they need. They're going to question what expenses that you took. I've had, you know, things where they took, income that the taxpayer really didn't have. And I said, no, this is the way that their situation really is, and kind of explaining to them sometimes there's matters that the taxpayer didn't disclose in the form, and you have to kind of work with the offer specialist to make sure that they do process the offer. And I've had really good luck in getting acceptances, as long as the application is done well and tight, and then you work with them and answer all their questions and provide them all the documentation you need. Had really good success. It's a great program. I mean, I have seen, where you can settle for 5-10 cents on the dollar type of thing, but you have to meet those criteria going forward.
And I know you've had tremendous success, and he's being really modest on the 5 and 10 cents on a dollar. We literally had one in the last, I'll just give it a bigger time range, but we had one in the last couple of years where it wasn't even 10 cents on a dollar. It wasn't even a penny on a dollar. It was a fraction of pennies on a dollar. Huge, big case that we ended up resolving with an offer and compromise. It was pretty cool because it really does. It's like Rich is saying, it really makes sense that you have somebody that knows what they're doing. Gosh, how many times have you seen somebody comes in and they already did an offer themselves, and you look at the form and go, is this true? You can't deduct, your tea times and but what happens is they present the offering companies with all this information, and now we have to say, that's not even true. Well, and then the IRS looks at it and goes, no, wait a minute. Your taxpayer told me that he had 3 dependents and he doesn't. So, well, let's walk through that. Well, because the client was thinking, oh, well, dependent, I might have my girlfriend, I have my girlfriend's daughter, I have my grandma living with me, and I have a good friend of mine. I give the guy money all the time. Well, when you start doing that and you submit your own offer, then the IRS says, well, you signed it under the penalty of perjury. So you lied to us. That's actually fraud. And now you want to come to us again and say, ooh, mea culpa, I'm not going to lie to you this time. It's really tentative. So I don't know how you feel about it, but should people be submitting offers themselves? Should they go to somebody that's brand new at it? Or, what is the big deal if they get somebody like you that's done this so many times?
Again, I think it's a 2-step process. It's getting the application tight where you're taking all the expenses and deductions that you're allowed, making sure that you disclose all the assets and that they're fairly valued, and that we get the correct asset value, get the correct net income value. So you have a good basis for submitting the offer. And then again, once the offer is submitted, I probably get a call from an offer specialist, maybe, once or twice a week for a month type of thing, dealing with it to try to get it finalized. And that, I think that's where I really earn my money. I've really pushed some that were going to be a rejection before I kind of stepped in and kind of massaged the process and got the offer specialist to see it the way that the client and we had with the submission. And that's where I think I really earn my money. And plus, I think people are, they have their own jobs, their own businesses, and they're busy with those. You don't want to be, dealing with an IRS agent for 2 times a week for a month, trying to get that's resolved. And then a lot of times they never see what you do. Also, we have appeals, know how to do appeals and work the system that way too. So there's a lot involved in. It's just the first part and the second part. And so, like I said, and I really believe that we do a good job in terms of making sure that we present an offer that's going to be acceptable, and then massaging the process to get an acceptance for our clients.
Interesting. So it really does make sense to get somebody that knows what they're doing, get a professional to work with you, and have that guy on your side, so that you can be advised which way to go. And sometimes it's really a matter of waiting till your income adjusts, or maybe there's some, there's an issue with an asset or a past payment or something you made. There are some things that we'll talk about next Monday, is like, what are some of the tricky things that, you think everything's good with an offer and compromise, and suddenly something comes up like, wait, what? Well, he used to have $3,000 in his bank, and that was 2 years ago. There's some things that come up which are kind of funny with offers. We'll be talking about that in the weeks to come. Rich, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so people get a hold of Rich. It's 855-500-TRUST here at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST. You can trust Richard to do a good job for you and put together an offer or whatever is going to be available to you. That's what you call us for, 855-500-TRUST. And we'll be back tomorrow.
Tell a friend about the Word on Wealth, featured since 1995, with financial solutions attorney Gary Quackenbush, an expert in estate planning, wills and trusts, and tax problem solving. Gary is past president of the California Society of Tax Consultants. Reach out to us. The Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer your questions and help you preserve your family's financial future. The information you hear on the Word on Wealth is for general information purposes only. This program discusses general financial and legal topics. Seek legal advice from a competent lawyer for your individual legal needs. The opinion